Hi, and welcome back to Ronnie the Reader. So, long time no see on this channel, at least in a formal long video. I have still been posting some short reviews of books that I have been reading. So, yeah, I've still been keeping up with what I've been reading. But as I've mentioned a couple of times in some videos last year, I completed a cross country move. So, it is now late January, and I am now fully moved across the country. I have my cats, and my fiance is here, and our stuff is here, and it was just a really long, lengthy, exhausting process that is something that I definitely don't want to do again, but maybe will one day eventually. But as far as what that means for YouTube and videos, I just didn't make the end of the year and beginning of the year videos that I wanted to make. I did record one video, which is this video that you're now watching, back in Arizona. So this is just a quick kind of introduction to introduce you to that video. And essentially, it is a book unhaul from when I moved. So I was going through my books and obviously packing them all up. You can see some of them behind me here. I now have two new bookshelves that you can see on my Instagram. If you would like to follow me, it's at Ronnie the Reader, Ronnie underscore the underscore reader. So feel free to follow me. But yeah, so this video is just going to be a quick unhaul going through the books that did not make the cross country trek with me. And even as I was unpacking, I think I may do another small unhaul, like maybe 5 books or so. I am here and have all of my books and can see everything together. This is the first time that every book that I do own that is mine has been together since 2016. So yeah, I've gone through some books that were here at my mom's house before and have gotten rid of them, but there are still some here that I just don't know what I'm going to do with. So all of that is to say, I hope you enjoy this unhaul. There may be another one coming shortly-ish, maybe in a couple of months, maybe the springtime for you, but I do hope that you enjoy this unhaul. So now let's throw it back to me in November, before Thanksgiving even occurred, when I decided to get rid of some of these books. Today's video is I'm going to be talking about some of the books that I'm getting rid of, and this is my largest book haul ever. I actually didn't count these. Let me count really quick of how many books are actually here. So there's 20 books that I'm getting rid of here, and I think that is the most amount of books I've ever gotten rid of at one time. And so I'm going to go through all of these and tell you if I've read them or not, kind of what I've thought of them, if I have read them, and why I'm deciding to part with it. Although the majority of the reasons for most of them, I guess the reasons for the majority of them, is pretty much similar and the same. All right, so we're going to start with the paperback books that I've decided to get rid of. So starting with the first book here, and it is The Odyssey by Homer. So I read the Odyssey in 9th grade. We read it as an English class, and I really liked it. I did really like the Odyssey. I thought it was really interesting. It was really fun to analyze as a class. And I bought this particular copy of the Odyssey from a Goodwill. No, actually, it was from a Savers, excuse me, for $3.49 right after Jacob and I started dating. So that would have been the summer of 2000. All this is pretty. It's a Penguin Classics edition. I just don't need to bring this across the country with me. And that is really the main reason I am getting it. I never planned to reread the Odyssey. I just liked having this particular book on my bookshelf, but you know, it can go. I don't need it with me. So the next book is an interesting one that I decided to get rid of because I really enjoyed this book when I read it, but it's just something that I don't think it necessarily sat with me in a way that I thought it was going to, and I don't know, I just don't need to keep it at this point. And that's I'm Thinking of Ending Things by Ian Reid. So this was like really popular when it came out. It's really interesting. It's a really quick read. It's very short. I think it's maybe only like 200. Yeah, like it's just over 200 pages. So a really quick read, a very kind of creepy, atmospheric read. I did a whole video back on my original channel about this book. Actually, I think it was featured. No, I think it was featured in a standalone video over there. But I don't really remember too much of what I thought of this book. I think I gave it 4 stars. But really, it's probably like a 3-star read, realistically. Like, it just didn't sit with me the way that I was anticipating. And I've held on to it for a long time because it definitely was a read that I enjoyed in the moment. But once again, when I'm trying to downsize, I'm really having to make hard decisions. So I don't necessarily hate any of the books that I'm getting rid of today. But this one just didn't make the cut when I picked up each book and just kind of really looked at it to try to decide if I wanted to keep it or not. As I was packing up all of these boxes of books, this one just didn't make the cut. So it's gonna go. And maybe I'll try to speed through these a little bit quicker. I'm not really giving a synopsis. But anyway, moving on. This one was definitely tough to decide, but it's The Year of the Witching by Alexis Henderson. And I really wanted to love this book. I thought I was going to really love it, but ultimately it was a 3-star read. And I definitely want to check out other Alexis Henderson books, but I kind of think that maybe her writing style just isn't for me particularly. So, I don't know how it will work out, but this was a 3-star read and just something that I just don't need to end up keeping. The next one is actually an ARC copy of a book that I have, and that is No Exit by Taylor Adams. This book was fairly popular. It is a thriller that came out, I think, in 2019, maybe, is when this book came out. But I read this. I did read the ARC copy. Oh, yes, it came out on January 2nd, 2019. But I read this book, and once again, it was like a 3.5, maybe 4-star read. And I really like the size of like ARC books. Like, this is my favorite size of paperback books, like, of all time. I wish all paperback books came in this particular size. But again, it's just not a book that I need to keep on my shelf. And so I am tossing it. Well, I'm not tossing it. I'm going to be donating all of these books. But moving on, similar book, and that is The Nanny by Gillian McMillan. Also a mystery thriller, also an ARC copy, a really pretty like cover. It's very metallic, and I really like this, like the way this book looks. I think this is the only Gillian McMillan that I have actually read thus far. I've always intended to read her novels, just haven't gotten around to most of them at this point. And this is just one that I don't remember too much about. It was like a 3-4-star read probably. And so I just don't need to hang on to this one. I don't need to keep it. So I am going to be donating that one. But moving on, we have a series here. The only series that I decided to part with. And these are actually technically not even my books. They are Jake's books. But he hasn't read them for years. And he was like, you know what, we just need to downsize. So, go ahead and donate them. So it is the Heroes of Olympus series by Rick Riordan. How do you actually say his name? But this is the, I guess, sequel series to Percy Jackson. I personally have never read Percy Jackson. I tried to. I just couldn't get into the first book. I know. I was bullied for it relentlessly in high school and middle school for not liking Percy Jackson. But I never got to Heroes of Olympus. So Jake decided to kind of let go of these. He read, I believe, all of them, and he enjoyed them. So, maybe in the future, if he ever wants to get them back, or maybe when we have kids and he wants his kids to have some books to read, outside of mine, then, we might reinvest in that series. But for now, we don't need it. So all of the rest of the books in front of me are standalone hardcovers. The first one, or the next one, is going to be The Kingdom of Back by Marie Lu. This is a Marie Lu book, obviously, that is very different from her others. It is a standalone novel that's very fantasy, historical-esque. I think it is about, like, Mozart and his sister or something, and then it's like fall into like this magical world or something like that, like something of that nature happens. I don't know. I did read this back in maybe 2020 or somewhere around there, and it just didn't stick with me. And so, when I'm trying to downsize books, it just didn't make the cut. So the next book, though, is a book that I'm really upset to part with because it's really pretty, but I really just wasn't a fan of this book. And that is The Devil and the Dark Water by Stuart Torton. And this is the sequel, or like the second book of his after he wrote The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle, which is like turned into one of my favorite books of all time, like retroactively. I really love that book and think about it like all of the time, except when I read it, I think I only gave it 4 stars. But really, that's like a 5-star book for me, just the way it like sat with me. This book, though, I struggled to get through. I really was not a fan of it. I hated it, realistically. Like, if I'm being honest, I just didn't like it. And so it's a big, thick, hardcover book that is going to take up space, and I just don't need to do that. Books are all, I think, besides one of them, book of the month pick books that I had. So let's start with the non-book of the month pick, because I didn't see it in the stack here. Oh, there's actually 2 book of the month picks. All right, so we'll start and then end with the non-book of the months. Anyway, Girl on the Train by Paula Hawkins, very famous thriller. I found this at a Goodwill for second hand and read it, and it was just fine. It was just okay. It was 3 stars. So I also don't need to keep this one. This next book is actually one of the only ones that I really haven't read. Obviously, The Heroes of Olympus, and then there's this book and one other that I've actually not read. And this one has been on my TBR for a really long time, and it is The Lost Apothecary by Sarah Penner. And it just has been sitting on my TBR for a long time, and I haven't gotten to it yet. So I decided to part with it. This is a book of the month pick from March of 2021. I did get it from Book of the Month when I had that subscription, and ultimately it just didn't appeal to me enough for me to ever pick it up. So getting rid of that one. The next is from an author that I've read a lot of and enjoyed most of her books, but this one just wasn't my favorite, and it's a hardcover, not one of my favorites, so I decided to part with it, and that's The Family Upstairs by Lisa Jewell. This was, I think, like a 4-star when I read it. I think I might have read this for a vlog at some point on my other channel, on that first channel that I had. It didn't stick enough with me to keep it, so I'm parting with it. I'm really speeding through these last couple of ones, but really all of them are like 3-star that I just don't want to keep, so that's really all it's to say. But the next one is One by One by Ruth Ware, one of my favorite thriller authors, but not one of my favorite books by this author. And honestly, now that I'm thinking about it, Ruth Ware has really been like more misses than hits with me. So yeah, just don't want to keep this one. Really pretty cover. I really love the cover design of this, but yeah, not gonna keep that one. Next book, same sort of vibes, although not read nearly as many books by this author as I have Ruth Ware, or a lot of other people, and that's The Wise by Taryn Fisher. Taryn Fisher was really on a hot streak there for a couple of years, kind of being like the new it author for a little bit. And this was a book of the month pick from December of 2019. And I think I read it in December of 2019 or very early in 2020. And I remember the reading experience of this book very well. And I think I may have also vlogged this at one point. I barely remember this book, and it stuck with me a lot, but not in a good way. This wasn't a good book. I think I did rate it 3 stars, but realistically, it's more of like a 2-star read, probably. All right, the next book, I was really debating if I had actually read it or not, because I really didn't remember, but I definitely did. And that is A Good Marriage by Kimberly McCreight. And I just don't remember much about this book at all. I know I did actually read it, and there's like a vague plot point that I do remember in this book, but just something that I don't need to keep with me. And so getting rid of that one. The next book is The Night Swim by Megan Golden. This was my first Megan Golden book. I've since read now The Escape Room and what's that other one called? Maybe Don't Sleep, something like that. It has like a red cover, but yeah, this was my first Megan Golden, and it was good. It was entertaining, but just didn't stick with me as much as her other ones. I really enjoyed those ones a lot more than I ultimately enjoyed The Night Swim. And I know that this one has a sequel now. I think it's more of like a sequel that it's following the same main character named Rachel. She has a podcast, like a true crime podcast. So I think the sequel, she's like investigating a different story or something like that. But I could be wrong about that. I'm not actually sure. But yeah, this one just didn't stick with me enough to end up keeping it. So I'm parting with that one. Finally, the last book is the other book that I haven't read yet. And it's not even a real book. It's more of a anthology, and it is Grimm's Complete Fairy Tales. This is a book that I've had for years. I got this in the bargain section at Barnes& and Noble years and years ago, maybe in 2018, 2019. It's really big. I just know that I'm probably never going to realistically read the fairy tales in here. Like maybe short ones, every so often, but just that's not the kind of reader that I ultimately am. And so I am deciding to part with this book. And I hope that someone else finds it and really loves it, who does love Grimm's fairy tales, and can really enjoy this book and this anthology for what it is supposed to be, because I'm just not that type of reader who will ultimately appreciate it the most. So yeah, that is everything. That is all of the books that I am unhauling here in Arizona before we move. So I still have 4 big boxes of books that I am bringing with me. As I noted before, they are extremely heavy, and I'm so thankful for the movers who will be helping us move and moving those boxes for me from the actual apartment to the truck and truck to the house when we are there, because that is going to be life-saving for me, a weak noodly arm reader. Thank you again so much for watching, and until the next video, I will see you then. Bye.